Keisha Williams had just transferred to a new school. She came from a place where survival meant learning to fight, where 8 years of mixed martial arts had turned her fists into weapons. She was a black belt wrapped in teenage silence. But the bullies didn't see that. They saw a quiet black girl, alone, an easy target. So they came at her with demands and threats, escalating the harassment every day. Then, one afternoon, they crossed a line. Laughter followed. Someone said she deserved it. The hallway watched, but Keisha didn't break. They thought she was weak. They thought she'd take it. They were wrong. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m., but Keisha Williams was already awake, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling of her new bedroom. Detroit felt like a lifetime away, though it had only been 3 days since the moving truck pulled away from their old house. She rolled out of bed and padded to the basement, where her mother had already set up the heavy bag in the corner. 40 minutes later, sweat dripped from her forehead as she finished her morning routine. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut. The combinations flowed like breathing. 8 years of training had made the movements instinctive. But today, they felt different. Today, they felt necessary. "Keisha, breakfast!" her mother called from upstairs. Dr. Patricia Williams stood at the stove, still in her scrubs from the night shift at Millbrook General. "How are you feeling about today, baby?" "Fine." Keisha grabbed a piece of toast. "Just another school." Her mother's eyes held concern. "I know this transition isn't easy. Millbrook is different from what we're used to." Different was an understatement. As Keisha walked through the front doors of Millbrook High, the sea of white faces confirmed what she already knew. Out of 800 students, she could count the black faces on 2 hands. The hallways buzzed with typical morning energy, but conversations seemed to pause as she passed. Whispers followed in her wake. She kept her head up, shoulders relaxed, the way Master Chen had taught her. Never show weakness, but never look for trouble. First period biology went smoothly enough. Second period history was tolerable. But lunch was where the real education began. The cafeteria stretched out like a social map. Popular kids claimed the center tables. Athletes dominated one corner. Theater kids clustered near the windows. Keisha grabbed a sandwich and looked for an empty spot. Well, well. Look what wandered in here. The voice carried across 3 tables. Derek Morrison stood 6'2" with the kind of confident swagger that came from never being challenged. His Letterman jacket hung perfectly on broad shoulders, and his smile never reached his cold blue eyes. Behind him, Jake Wilson cracked his knuckles, while Tommy Bradley snickered. The cafeteria fell quiet. All eyes turned toward the confrontation brewing in the center of the room. Keisha continued toward an empty table, but Derek stepped into her path. "I'm talking to you." His voice carried the casual authority of someone used to being obeyed. "We need to have a conversation." She stopped, meeting his gaze without flinching. "About what?" "About how things work around here." Derek's smile widened, showing too many teeth. "See, new students usually pay a little welcome fee. Call it insurance. Make sure nothing bad happens to them." Jake and Tommy flanked her sides, close enough that she could smell their cologne. The cafeteria remained dead silent, 200 students watching like it was dinner theater. "Insurance against what?" Keisha's voice stayed level, curious rather than confrontational. "Accidents," Derek shrugged. "Lockers getting jammed. Books going missing. People bumping into you in the halls. Funny how clumsy some folks can be around here. Especially the ones who don't belong," Tommy added with a nasty grin. Keisha set her lunch tray on the nearest table. When she turned back to Derek, her posture remained relaxed. But something had shifted in her eyes. "I don't pay protection money." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Derek's smile faltered for just a moment before returning full force. That's where you're wrong, girl. Everyone pays. Question is whether you pay easy or you pay hard. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried across the silent room. Unless you think you're too good for our little system here. Think you're better than the rest of us? I don't pay at all. She picked up her tray and walked around him toward the empty table. For a moment, Derek stood frozen, clearly not expecting outright refusal. The cafeteria waited. This isn't over, he called after her, loud enough for everyone to hear. Nobody disrespects me in my school. Nobody. Keisha sat down and unwrapped her sandwich, as if nothing had happened. But her peripheral vision tracked Derek's every movement as he stormed out with his crew in tow. At a table across the room, Marcus Thompson shook his head and muttered to his friend, "Girl has no idea what she just started." The conversations gradually resumed, but the energy had changed. Word would spread through the school before the lunch period ended. The new girl had just declared war on Derek Morrison. Keisha took a bite of her sandwich, chewing slowly. She'd hoped to get through at least one day without trouble. But some things were inevitable, and backing down from Bullies had never been an option. The real question wasn't whether Derek would retaliate. It was when and how far he'd be willing to go. The harassment started before second period ended. Keisha walked to her locker, keys in hand, but the lock wouldn't turn. She tried again, checking the combination she'd memorized that morning. Nothing. Having trouble? Jake Wilson appeared beside her, grinning. Locks can be tricky when they get damaged. She examined the mechanism. Someone had jammed gum into the keyhole. Real mature. Just the beginning, Jake said, walking away backward so he could watch her reaction. Derek's got a long memory. Third period American history dragged by without incident, but as Keisha gathered her books, she noticed her notebook was missing, the one with 3 days' worth of notes. She searched her bag twice before giving up. In the hallway, she spotted Tommy Bradley showing off the notebook to a group of freshmen, making exaggerated gestures as he read her handwriting aloud in a mocking voice. Look at this fancy penmanship. Must think she's real special. Keisha approached calmly. That's mine. Prove it. Tommy held it above his head like a playground bully. Maybe if you ask nice, I'll consider giving it back. She didn't ask. She didn't grab for it either. Instead, she pulled out her phone and snapped a photo of him holding it. What are you doing? Tommy's bravado wavered. Evidence. She slipped the phone back into her pocket. In case I need to file a theft report. Tommy's face reddened, but he threw the notebook at her feet before stalking away. The pages scattered across the hallway floor. As Keisha knelt to collect her notes, a pair of worn sneakers appeared in her line of sight. She looked up to see Marcus Thompson, the same student who'd commented at lunch. You need some advice, Marcus said quietly, glancing around to make sure they weren't overheard. I'm listening. Derek Morrison isn't just some rich kid playing tough. His dad owns half the businesses in town, including the car dealership where my mom works. His uncle's the police chief. When Derek wants something to happen, it happens. Keisha stood, clutching her retrieved notes. Are you trying to scare me? I'm trying to save you. Marcus's voice carried genuine concern. Last year, there was this kid, Miguel Santos. Transfer student like you. Derek decided Miguel was getting too friendly with some girl Derek liked. Miguel ended up with a broken nose and 3 cracked ribs. Fell down some stairs, according to the official report. And you believe that? I believe Miguel transferred schools 2 weeks later. Marcus leaned closer. Look, I get it. Standing up feels good. But Derek doesn't fight fair, and he doesn't fight alone. Whatever you're thinking about doing, don't. Before Keisha could respond, Marcus melted back into the crowd of students changing classes. The afternoon brought escalating harassment. Someone accidentally spilled chocolate milk on her backpack during lunch. In chemistry lab, her safety goggles went missing, forcing her to borrow a scratched pair that made it impossible to read measurements clearly. By sixth period, a pattern had emerged. Derek's crew took turns making her life difficult, always with plausible deniability, always with witnesses who saw accidents, not harassment. But seventh period pushed things too far. Keisha sat in English class, trying to focus on the discussion of To Kill a Mockingbird, when Derek raised his hand. "Mrs. Patterson, I think we should hear from our newest student about this book. I bet she has some real insights into the themes." "Mrs." Patterson smiled encouragingly. "Keisha, would you like to share your thoughts on Harper Lee's portrayal of racial injustice?" The setup was obvious, but Keisha responded thoughtfully, discussing the book's exploration of prejudice and moral courage. She spoke for 2 minutes, articulating her points clearly and intelligently. When she finished, Derek started slow clapping. "Wow, that was so well spoken. You're really articulate for—" He paused, letting the implication hang in the air. "I mean, it's nice to hear someone who can express themselves so clearly." The classroom fell silent. Mrs. Patterson's face flushed, but she seemed frozen, unsure how to address the obvious racial undertone without making things worse. "Thank you," Keisha said evenly. "I appreciate you noticing my ability to communicate effectively." Derek's smile faltered slightly at her calm response, but he pressed forward. "It's just refreshing, you know. Sometimes people from certain backgrounds struggle with academic discussions." The silence grew heavier. A few students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "I'm sure you'll find that people from all backgrounds can surprise you," Keisha replied, her voice steady as steel. When the bell rang, she gathered her books without hurry, walking out with her head high. But inside, something had crystallized. The games were over. Derek had just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. In the hallway, she could hear Derek laughing with his friends, probably congratulating himself on his clever performance. He had no idea what he'd just unleashed. Friday morning started with Keisha finding her locker decorated. Someone had taped a banana to the metal door with a note that read, "Welcome to the jungle," in Derek's distinctive handwriting. She removed it without expression, aware of the students gathering to watch her reaction. Some looked ashamed, others snickered. Keisha crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash, but she kept the tape as evidence. "Oh, did you not like your present?" Derek appeared with his usual entourage, speaking loud enough for the growing crowd to hear. "I thought you might be homesick for the urban wildlife." "Creative," Keisha said, closing her locker with deliberate calm. "But you might want to work on your penmanship. Makes it easy to identify the source." Derek's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to his targets talking back, especially not in front of an audience. "Maybe you need a lesson in respect. Maybe you need a lesson in basic human decency." The hallway buzzed with whispered reactions. Students pulled out phones, sensing something bigger brewing. Throughout the morning, the harassment intensified. In PE, someone had put itching powder in her gym clothes. During lunch, Jake Wilson deliberately bumped into her, sending her tray crashing to the floor. "Oops," Jake said, not bothering to hide his grin. "Hope you're not too clumsy to clean that up." Keisha knelt to gather the scattered food, while students stepped around her. A few offered to help, but she waved them off. She could handle Derek's games. What she couldn't handle was the growing audience that seemed to enjoy the show. The breaking point came during 8th period study hall. Keisha sat alone at a corner table working on calculus homework when Derek and his crew approached. The study hall monitor had stepped out, leaving 30 students unsupervised. "Hey everyone," Derek announced, his voice carrying across the room. "I've got something special to share." He pulled out his phone, and suddenly Keisha's voice filled the room through a small Bluetooth speaker. It was her English class discussion from the day before, but edited and manipulated. Her thoughtful comments about racial injustice had been spliced with audio clips to make it sound like she was saying inflammatory things about white people. The edited recording painted her as an angry, racist outsider who hated her new school and everyone in it. Students looked shocked, confused, some angry. "Guess we know how she really feels about us," Derek said, pocketing his phone with satisfaction. "Good thing we got to hear her true thoughts." Keisha sat frozen as whispers erupted around her. Some students looked suspicious, others disgusted. A few seemed to realize the audio was fake, but their voices were drowned out by those who believed it. "That's not what I said." Keisha's voice cut through the noise, but Derek talked over her. "Are you calling me a liar? Everyone just heard you. Everyone just heard you manipulate recordings to make me sound like something I'm not." Derek stepped closer to her table. "Why would I need to manipulate anything? We all heard what kind of person you really are." The study hall door opened, and Mrs. Chen, the monitor, returned. The room fell silent, students suddenly fascinated by their homework. "Is everything all right in here, Mrs.?" Chen asked, sensing the tension. "Perfect," Derek said with his politician's smile. "Just having a friendly discussion about current events?" When the bell rang, Keisha gathered her books with hands that barely trembled. Students filed out, some avoiding eye contact, others staring openly. The damage was done. By tomorrow, Derek's edited recording would be all over social media. As she walked toward her final class, she overheard fragments of conversation. "I can't believe she said that stuff. Seemed so quiet and nice." Derek was right about her. At her locker after school, Keisha found Marcus waiting for her. "That recording was fake," he said quietly. "I was in English class. I heard what you actually said. Doesn't matter now." Keisha pulled out her jacket. "Damage is done. You could fight it. Prove it was edited. Or I could fight the source." Marcus grabbed her arm. "Don't do anything stupid. Derek's expecting you to retaliate. He's probably got it all planned out. How to make you look like the aggressor, how to get you suspended or arrested." Keisha looked at Marcus's concerned face, then at the students walking past, some still whispering and pointing. Derek had been systematic in his campaign to isolate and humiliate her. Every move calculated to push her toward a reaction that would justify his cruelty. "Maybe it's time to give him what he's expecting." She shrugged off Marcus's grip and headed for the exit. Behind her, Marcus called out, "Keisha, don't do this. It's not worth it." But some things were worth it. Her dignity was worth it. Her right to exist in this school without being terrorized was worth it. And sometimes, the only way to stop a bully was to show them that their target could bite back. Outside, Derek and his crew were horsing around in the parking lot, probably celebrating their successful character assassination. They looked so pleased with themselves, so confident in their power. Keisha dropped her backpack by the school entrance and walked toward them with purpose. It was time to have that conversation Derek kept talking about. But this time, it would be on her terms. Derek was still laughing about the recording when he saw Keisha approaching across the parking lot. His laughter died as he noticed her purposeful stride, the way she'd dropped her backpack like dead weight. Well, look who decided to come talk after all." Derek straightened, Jake and Tommy flanking him automatically. "Ready to apologize for being so unfriendly?" Keisha stopped 10 feet away, her voice calm and clear. "I'm done with your games, Derek. The fake recording, the harassment, all of it. This ends now." "Oh, it ends when I say it ends." Derek's confidence swelled with his audience. A few students had stopped to watch, sensing drama. "You think you can just walk into my school and disrespect me? Think again. Your school?" Keisha took a step closer. "Last I checked, this was a public institution funded by taxpayers, including my mother." Derek's face reddened. "Don't get smart with me. You're outnumbered and outclassed. Walk away while you still can. I tried walking away. You followed. I tried ignoring you. You escalated. I tried being reasonable. Another step closer. Now, we do this my way. Tommy cracked his knuckles. You sure you want to do this? 3 against 1 doesn't look good for you. Neither does picking on someone you thought couldn't fight back. Keisha's voice remained steady, but her stance shifted slightly. Weight balanced on the balls of her feet. Last chance, Derek. Agree to leave me alone, and this doesn't have to get ugly. Derek laughed, the sound harsh in the afternoon air. You're hilarious. What are you going to do? Call your mommy? I'm going to give you exactly what you've been asking for. The moment Derek reached for her arm, Keisha moved. Her training kicked in with fluid precision. She twisted away from his grab, seized his wrist, and used his own momentum to send him stumbling. Before he could recover, her elbow connected with his solar plexus, doubling him over. Jake lunged next, swinging wild and angry. Keisha ducked, swept his legs, and sent him sprawling onto the asphalt. Tommy hesitated, suddenly realizing this wasn't going according to plan. Derek straightened, breathing hard but furious. You think you're tough? Let's see how tough. What followed was brutal and efficient. Derek had size and rage, but Keisha had skill and 8 years of disciplined training. She moved like water around his clumsy attempts to grab or hit her, striking precisely when openings appeared. Jake and Tommy kept trying to help, but only succeeded in getting in Derek's way or finding themselves on the receiving end of Keisha's defensive strikes. The fight moved across the parking lot as Derek kept charging, kept swinging, kept refusing to stay down. By the time it ended, Derek faced down on the asphalt with Keisha's knee between his shoulder blades. They'd traveled nearly half a block. Derek's nose bled freely. Jake nursed a swollen eye, and Tommy held his ribs gingerly. Are we done? Keisha asked, her breathing controlled despite the exertion. Get off me, Derek gasped. Are we done? She repeated, applying slight pressure. Fine. We're done. You're going to leave me alone. All 3 of you. No more games, no more harassment, no more edited recordings. Are we clear? Yeah, we're clear. Keisha released him and stepped back, watching as Derek rolled over and sat up, blood trickling from his nose. The small crowd of witnesses stood in stunned silence. Good talk, she said, then walked back toward the school to retrieve her backpack. Meanwhile, inside the building, Principal Martinez was finishing up paperwork when her secretary knocked. Mrs. Martinez? There's been some kind of incident in the parking lot. Students are saying there was a fight. Principal Martinez sighed and reached for her jacket. How bad? Well, nobody's called an ambulance, but you might want to see this yourself. As the principal hurried outside, she found Derek Morrison wiping blood from his face, while Jake and Tommy helped him to his feet. A cluster of students stood nearby, phones out, excited chatter filling the air. What happened here? Principal Martinez demanded. Nothing, Derek muttered, avoiding eye contact. Just fooling around. Derek Morrison, you're bleeding. That's not fooling around. I fell, Derek said quickly. Wasn't paying attention. Tripped over my own feet. Principal Martinez looked skeptical, but before she could press further, Derek and his friends were walking away, Derek leaning heavily on Jake for support. The next morning, the rumors had already evolved into legend. Some said Keisha had used weapons. Others claimed she'd beaten up 5 guys. The truth was impressive enough, but high school gossip had never been constrained by facts. During second period, Jessica Martinez, a sophomore with nervous energy, approached Keisha at her locker, with her friend Amber close behind. Hey, Jessica said quietly, glancing around to make sure they weren't overheard. Can we talk to you about something? Keisha studied the 2 girls. Jessica looked scared, but determined. Amber seemed ready to bolt at the first sign of trouble. What's going on? "We heard what happened yesterday with Derek and his friends," Jessica continued, "and we were wondering, would you be willing to help with something similar?" "Similar how?" Amber finally spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "There are these guys from Riverside High. They've been bothering us at the bus stop after school. Yesterday, they—" She trailed off, looking at Jessica. "They grabbed Amber's backpack and dumped everything out," Jessica finished. "Called her some really horrible names. Said they'd be back today to continue the conversation." Keisha closed her locker and turned to face them fully. "What exactly are you asking me to do? Would you come with us to the bus stop today?" Jessica's voice wavered between hope and fear. "Maybe if they see you there, they'll leave us alone." Keisha looked at their frightened faces and thought about Derek's bloody nose, about the edited recording, about every small humiliation that had led to yesterday's confrontation. "What time does your bus come?" At 3:15, Keisha walked to the bus stop on Maple Street with Jessica and Amber. The afternoon sun cast long shadows between the houses, and a cool breeze rustled the leaves overhead. The two girls stayed close to her, their nervous energy almost palpable. "They usually show up around 3:20, Jessica whispered, checking her phone. "The bus doesn't come until 3:45, so they have plenty of time to—" "To what, exactly?" Keisha asked. Amber's voice shook slightly. "Yesterday they surrounded us, said we looked lonely and needed some company. When I tried to walk away, one of them grabbed my arm and said I was being rude. Then they dumped my backpack and made us pick everything up while they watched," Jessica added. "Said if we told anyone, they'd make sure we regretted it." Keisha nodded, her eyes scanning the street. "How many?" "3. Brad's the leader. Tall guy with bleached hair. Connor's got the sleeve tattoos, and Tyler's the one who grabbed Amber." At exactly 3:22, a beat-up Camaro turned onto Maple Street, music thumping from its speakers. The car slowed as it approached the bus stop, and 3 guys climbed out with the swagger of people who owned the neighborhood. Brad spotted Keisha immediately, his eyes narrowing with confusion. "Who's the new girl?" "Nobody," Jessica said quickly. "Just waiting for the bus," Connor laughed, flexing the tattoos that covered his forearms. "Looks like somebody to me. Looks like somebody who doesn't belong in this neighborhood." Tyler stepped closer to Amber, who instinctively moved behind Keisha. "Did you bring backup, sweetheart?" "That's not very friendly." "Actually," Keisha said, her voice carrying clearly in the quiet street, "I'm here to have a conversation with you 3. Brad's eyebrows rose. "A conversation? About what?" "About how you're going to leave these girls alone from now on." The 3 boys exchanged glances before bursting into laughter. Connor wiped his eyes dramatically. "Oh, that's rich." "The cavalry consists of one girl who thinks she's tough." "I don't think anything," Keisha replied calmly. "I'm simply informing you that your harassment ends today." Tyler stepped even closer to Amber, deliberately invading her space. "And what if we don't feel like ending anything? Then you'll discover that some people don't make easy targets." Brad moved to flank Keisha's left side while Connor took the right. "You know what? I like you. You've got spirit. Why don't you dump these losers and hang out with some real men?" "I'm not interested in hanging out with boys who terrorize children." "Children?" Tyler's voice turned ugly. "These aren't children. They're old enough to learn some respect." He reached out to grab Amber's shoulder, and that's when Keisha moved. Her left hand intercepted Tyler's reaching arm, twisting it away from Amber while her right hand struck his wrist. Tyler yelped and stumbled backward, cradling his arm. "What the—" Connor started forward, but Keisha was already repositioning. "Last warning," she said, her stance balanced and ready. "Walk away." Instead, Brad charged from her left, while Connor came from the right. Keisha dropped low, sweeping Brad's legs while pivoting to catch Connor with an elbow to his midsection. Both boys hit the ground hard. Tyler, still nursing his wrist, pulled out his phone. You crazy witch! I'm calling the cops. Go ahead, Keisha said, without taking her eyes off Brad and Connor, who were struggling to their feet. Tell them 3 high school boys got beaten up while trying to assault 2 younger girls. I'm sure that'll go well for you. From behind her phone, Jessica had been recording the entire encounter. I got all of it, she said, her voice stronger now, including the part where Tyler tried to grab Amber. Brad wiped blood from his split lip, glaring at Keisha with newfound respect and anger. You have no idea who you're messing with. 3 cowards who pick on girls smaller than them? Yeah, I've got a pretty good idea. Connor limped back toward the car, his tough guy swagger completely deflated. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Keisha said firmly. If I see any of you near these girls again, our next conversation won't be this polite. Tyler started to say something, but Brad grabbed his arm. Come on, let's get out of here. As the Camaro pulled away with squealing tires, Jessica lowered her phone with shaking hands. Oh my God, that was incredible. Are you both okay? Keisha asked, her attention returning to the girls. Amber nodded, tears of relief in her eyes. Thank you. I can't believe you did that. They were counting on you being too scared to fight back, Keisha said. Bullies always count on that. The bus rounded the corner, its brakes hissing as it approached the stop. As they climbed aboard, Jessica was already uploading the video to her social media accounts. Everyone needs to see this, she said excitedly. Everyone needs to know that someone's finally standing up to these creeps. Keisha settled into a seat, unaware that Jessica's video would be shared hundreds of times before dinner, launching her from local legend to viral sensation overnight. By 7 p.m., Jessica's video had been shared over 300 times. By 9 p.m., it had reached 1,000. The caption read, "Girl stands up to bullies harassing students at bus stop. Finally, someone fights back." Comments poured in from students across 3 school districts. Stories of harassment, intimidation, and abuse that had been whispered about in hallways suddenly found a public forum. This is the girl who beat up Derek Morrison, too. About time someone stood up to the Riverside crew. She should teach self-defense classes. Meanwhile, across town, Derek Morrison sat in his bedroom with an ice pack pressed to his still-swollen nose, watching the video for the 5th time. His phone buzzed with notifications, friends sending him the link, asking if this was the same girl who'd humiliated him. This can't be happening, he muttered, scrolling through the comments. Someone had already connected the dots, posting about his own encounter with Keisha in the school parking lot. His phone rang. Jake's name flashed on the screen. You seeing this? Jake's voice was tight with anger. Everyone's seeing this. My dad's already asking questions about why I look like I got hit by a truck. She's making us look like complete idiots. First us, now the Riverside guys. People are calling her some kind of superhero. Derek's jaw clenched. She's not a superhero. She just got lucky twice. At the same time, in Riverside, Brad Matthews was having a similar conversation with his crew. How did we look so weak? Connor demanded, pacing his garage while Tyler nursed his still sore wrist. 3 of us against 1 girl, and we got destroyed. Because she knew how to fight, and we didn't expect it, Brad said, but his voice lacked conviction. Tyler pulled up the video again. Look at this. She doesn't even look winded afterward. And now, everyone's calling us cowards and bullies. We are bullies, Connor snapped. That's the point. Fear keeps people in line. But if word gets out that some high school girl can take us down, our reputation's shot, Brad finished. Nobody's going to respect us after this. Back at Millbrook High, the viral video was creating a different kind of chaos. Students who had suffered in silence were suddenly finding their voices. Principal Martinez arrived at school Monday morning to find her voicemail full of messages from parents. Some demanded Keisha be expelled for violence. Others praised her for protecting their children. Most wanted to know why the school wasn't already addressing the harassment their kids had been reporting. Her secretary, Mrs. Chen, handed her a stack of incident reports that had been submitted over the weekend. 12 students came forward with harassment complaints. All of them mentioned seeing the video and deciding they couldn't stay quiet anymore. Principal Martinez flipped through the reports, her expression growing more troubled with each page. How did we not know about this? Some of these incidents happened off campus. Others, well, the students say they reported them, but nothing was done. During first period, Keisha found herself surrounded by students who wanted to thank her, ask her questions, or simply be near someone who had stood up to the system that had failed them. "You're like a real-life action hero," said a sophomore named Danny, whose own report detailed months of harassment by older students. "I'm not a hero," Keisha replied. "I just got tired of being pushed around." But even as students celebrated her actions, the administration was scrambling to control the narrative. Principal Martinez called an emergency meeting with the school board, where the conversation quickly turned to damage control. The incident happened off school property, Board President Walsh insisted. "We can distance ourselves from this entirely." "Can we?" Principal Martinez pulled up the video on her laptop. "Because half the comments are about how our school has a bullying problem that we've been ignoring." Board member Johnson leaned forward. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that maybe we should listen to what these students are saying instead of worrying about our image." The meeting grew heated as board members debated whether to support Keisha or suspend her for fighting. Meanwhile, a parent petition was circulating online, demanding the school implement self-defense training and better protection for students. By lunch, over 50 students had signed up for a support group Jessica had organized. The group's mission was simple: create a safe space for students who had experienced harassment and advocate for better protection policies. As Keisha walked through the hallways, she noticed the change in atmosphere. Students who had once averted their eyes now nodded respectfully. Teachers who had previously ignored subtle harassment were suddenly more vigilant. But she also noticed Derek and his friends watching her with undisguised hatred. And she knew that while she'd won 2 battles, the war was far from over. The viral video had given her a platform and a following, but it had also painted a target on her back that was bigger than ever before. Tuesday morning, Keisha was called to the principal's office before first period. Principal Martinez sat behind her desk, with the tight expression of someone who'd been awake too long dealing with phone calls. "Please, sit down." Principal Martinez gestured to the chair across from her. "We need to discuss what happened at the bus stop. Students were being harassed. I helped them by engaging in physical violence off school property." Principal Martinez opened a file on her desk. "I've received 17 calls from parents since yesterday. Some want you expelled, others want you given a medal. The school board is meeting tonight to decide how to handle this situation." Keisha kept her voice level. "Handle what situation? I defended 2 students from assault. You beat up 3 boys and posted it online. I didn't post anything, and those boys were terrorizing students from this school." Principal Martinez rubbed her temples. "Keisha, I understand your frustration, but vigilante justice isn't the answer. We have procedures, protocols. Your procedures didn't stop Derek Morrison from harassing me for a week. Your protocols didn't protect Jessica and Amber from being grabbed and threatened. That's not—" Principal Martinez started, then stopped. "Look, I'm trying to help you here. The school board wants this to go away quietly. If you agree to stop the physical interventions, we can probably avoid suspension. And if I don't agree, then we'll have to consider more serious consequences." Keisha stood up. "Is that all? Please think about what I've said. This path you're on, it's not sustainable." As Keisha left the office, she found Danny and 3 other students waiting in the hallway. "We heard you got called in," Danny said nervously. "Are you in trouble?" Maybe. Keisha started walking toward her locker. Why? Because we wanted to ask you something. Danny hurried to keep pace with her. A bunch of us were talking, and we were wondering, would you teach us what you know? Keisha stopped walking. Teach you what? How to fight back. How to defend ourselves. Danny's voice grew stronger. I've been getting pushed around since 7th grade. Yesterday, for the first time, nobody bothered me. They're all scared you might be watching. That won't last forever. Exactly. That's why we need to learn how to protect ourselves. A girl named Sarah stepped forward. My older brother goes to Riverside. He says those boys you fought are planning something. They're embarrassed and angry. What kind of something? He wouldn't say, but he warned me to be careful walking home. Meanwhile, in the gym office, Coach Rodriguez was having his own difficult conversation with Principal Martinez. You want me to ban her from using the gym? Coach Rodriguez crossed his arms. For what? For starting an unauthorized martial arts program. Parents are calling this a fight club. Have you seen what she's actually doing? She's teaching kids to defend themselves. Basic moves, confidence building. It's exactly what half these students need. Principal Martinez sighed. The insurance liability alone is less than what we'll face when one of these harassment incidents turns into something worse. Coach Rodriguez leaned forward. Sarah, I've been teaching here for 12 years. I've never seen students more engaged in physical fitness than they've been this week. The school board doesn't see it that way. Then maybe the school board needs to spend some time in the hallways, watching how these kids interact now. Watching how the bullies are suddenly finding other things to do with their time. That afternoon, Keisha arrived at the gym to find 30 students waiting for her. Word had spread despite the administration's concerns. Students who had never spoken to each other were united by shared experiences of harassment and a desire to change their situations. I talked to Principal Martinez, Keisha announced. The school board doesn't want us meeting here. Disappointed murmurs rippled through the group. However, Keisha continued, this is technically after-school hours, and Coach Rodriguez has given us permission to use the space. Coach Rodriguez emerged from his office. As far as I'm concerned, this is a fitness club focused on self-defense and confidence building, completely within school guidelines. The students erupted in cheers, but Keisha held up her hand for quiet. Before we start, everyone needs to understand something. This isn't about fighting. This is about having the skills and confidence to protect yourself and others. We don't look for trouble, but we don't run from it either. As she began teaching basic defensive stances, she noticed Derek and Jake watching through the gym's glass doors. Their expressions mixed anger with something that might have been fear. Derek turned to Jake. Look at them! She's building an army. What do we do about it? Derek's smile was cold. We make sure everyone understands that actions have consequences. Inside the gym, students practiced breaking free from wrist grabs and verbal de-escalation techniques, unaware that their newfound confidence was being viewed as a direct threat by those who had profited from their fear. By Friday, Keisha's self-defense program had grown to over 60 students. The corner of the gym buzzed with activity as teenagers practiced escaping holds, building confidence, and learning to project strength through body language. Remember, Keisha called out to the group, the goal is always to de-escalate and get away safely. Fighting is the last resort, not the first option. Sarah, who had been quiet and withdrawn just a week ago, now stood straighter as she practiced defensive moves. I can't believe how different I feel, she told Danny during a water break. Like I actually have some control over what happens to me. Same, Danny replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. Yesterday, when those seniors tried to mess with me in the hallway, I just looked them in the eye and kept walking. They backed off. Coach Rodriguez watched from his office, taking notes for his report to Principal Martinez. The transformation in these students was remarkable, not just physically, but in their entire demeanor. They walked taller, spoke with more confidence, and seemed to support each other in ways he'd never seen before. But while the program flourished inside the gym, outside forces were mobilizing against it. That same Friday evening, Derek Morrison sat in his car in the parking lot of a 24-hour diner on the edge of town, waiting. His nose had healed, but his pride remained shattered. The video of his humiliation had been viewed over 10,000 times, with comments that made his stomach churn. At 8:30, a beat-up Camaro pulled into the parking spot next to him. Brad Matthews climbed out, followed by Connor and Tyler, all three looking as angry and frustrated as Derek felt. "Took you long enough," Derek said, as they slid into the booth across from him and Jake. "Had to make sure nobody followed us," Brad replied, his voice tight. "Can't afford any more videos going viral." Tommy shifted uncomfortably. "I still think this is a bad idea. What if someone finds out we're working together?" "Nobody's going to find out," Derek snapped. "Unless you plan on running your mouth." Connor leaned forward. "Look, we all have the same problem. This girl made us look weak, and now everyone thinks they can stand up to us. Our reputations are garbage." "It's worse than that," Jake added. "She's teaching other kids to fight back. Yesterday, some freshman actually pushed back when I tried to mess with him." "A freshman?" Tyler nodded angrily. "Same thing's happening at our school. Kids who used to hand over lunch money are suddenly growing spines." Derek pulled out his phone and showed them a video from that afternoon's training session. 60 kids. She's got 60 kids learning to fight. In a month, it'll be 100. "So what's your plan?" Brad asked. Derek's smile was cold and calculating. "We can't touch her physically anymore. Too many people watching, too many cameras. But we can destroy her legally." "How?" "Assault charges. My dad knows people in the legal system. We file complaints with the police, claim she attacked us unprovoked. Get her arrested, expelled, maybe even sent to juvenile detention." Connor frowned. "But there's video evidence of what really happened." "Videos can be misinterpreted," Derek said smoothly. "Especially when you have the right lawyer explaining them to a judge. My dad's already talked to our family attorney." "What about the bus stop thing?" Tyler asked. "That video's everywhere. 3 high school boys versus 1 girl. We'll claim she was armed, that we were defending ourselves. Who's going to believe we were actually trying to hurt those sophomore girls?" Jake nodded slowly. "And once she's arrested, her little fight club falls apart. Kids go back to being scared, and we go back to being in control." Brad looked skeptical. "This could backfire. What if people don't believe us?" "They will," Derek said confidently. "Because my family has influence in this town, and hers doesn't. Because we're the victims here, not her." The 6 boys spent the next hour planning their strategy. They would coordinate their stories, file complaints simultaneously, and present a united front, claiming that Keisha Williams was a dangerous individual who had attacked innocent students without provocation. Meanwhile, back at the school, Keisha was finishing up the training session, unaware of the legal trap being set for her. "Same time Monday?" Sarah asked as students gathered their belongings. "Absolutely," Keisha replied. "And remember, practice your situational awareness over the weekend. Trust your instincts." As the students filed out, chattering excitedly about their progress, Coach Rodriguez approached Keisha. "You've done something special here," he said quietly. "These kids are different, stronger." "They were always strong," Keisha replied. "They just needed to remember it. Be careful, though. Change like this makes some people nervous, especially people who benefit from the old system." Keisha nodded, gathering her own things. She'd felt the tension building all week. The way Derek and his friends watched her, the whispered conversations that stopped when she approached, the sense that something was brewing beneath the surface. What she didn't know was that the storm was about to break, and it would test not just her fighting skills, but her faith in justice itself. Monday morning, Dr. Patricia Williams received the call that changed everything. She was reviewing patient charts at the hospital when her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Dr. Williams? This is Sergeant Hayes with the Millbrook Police Department. We need you to come down to the station with your daughter." Patricia's blood went cold. "Is Keisha hurt? What happened?" "She's not hurt, ma'am, but assault charges have been filed against her. We need to bring her in for questioning." "Assault charges? That's impossible. My daughter doesn't—" "Ma'am, we have 6 complainants. I suggest you contact a lawyer." Patricia's hands shook as she called Keisha's school, then her own supervisor, to request emergency leave. By the time she reached Millbrook High, police were already waiting in the principal's office. Principal Martinez looked stricken as she explained the situation. 6 boys from 2 different schools have filed formal complaints, claiming Keisha attacked them without provocation. "That's ridiculous," Patricia said firmly. "My daughter was defending herself and protecting other students." "The complainants tell a different story," Sergeant Hayes said, checking his notes. "They claim she's been systematically targeting and assaulting male students. They're requesting restraining orders." When Keisha was called to the office, her calm composure wavered for the first time since transferring to Millbrook. Seeing her mother's worried face and the police officer's stern expression, she understood that Derek's retaliation had taken a form she hadn't anticipated. "Am I under arrest?" she asked quietly. "Not yet," Sergeant Hayes replied, "but you need to come to the station for questioning. Your mother can accompany you." As word spread through the school that Keisha had been taken away by police, the student body erupted into organized chaos. Jessica Martinez burst into tears when she heard the news. "This is my fault," she sobbed to Sarah. "If I hadn't posted that video—" "No," Sarah said firmly, surprising herself with her own strength. "This is Derek's fault, and Brad's, and all the other bullies who can't stand that someone finally stood up to them." Within an hour, students were organizing. Danny created a group chat called Justice for Keisha that grew to over 200 members in 30 minutes. Videos from the bus stop incident were reposted with detailed explanations of what had really happened. Marcus Thompson, who had tried to warn Keisha weeks ago, now found himself leading an impromptu protest in the school cafeteria. "They're trying to destroy her for protecting us," he announced to anyone who would listen, "for giving us the courage to protect ourselves." Meanwhile, at the police station, Keisha sat in an interrogation room with her mother and the court-appointed lawyer Patricia had hastily contacted. "Tell me exactly what happened," the lawyer, Ms. Rodriguez, said. "Starting with your first day at school." Keisha recounted everything: Derek's protection money demand, the escalating harassment, the edited recording, the parking lot confrontation, and the bus stop incident. Her mother listened with growing anger as details emerged that Keisha had never shared. "Why didn't you tell me about this?" Patricia asked, hurt evident in her voice. "Because I thought I could handle it myself, and because I knew if you complained to the school, it would just make things worse." Ms. Rodriguez took notes furiously. "Do you have any evidence of this harassment?" "Some. I took photos of things they did to my locker. There might be security footage of some incidents." Back at school, Coach Rodriguez was having his own heated conversation with Principal Martinez. "You know this is wrong," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "You've seen what that girl has done for our students, the confidence she's given them, the way she's helped them stand up for themselves." "My hands are tied," Principal Martinez replied. 6 families have filed complaints. The school board is in crisis mode because they're more worried about lawsuits than about doing what's right." Coach Rodriguez— "No, let me finish. I've watched Derek Morrison and his friends terrorize students for years. I've filed reports, recommended interventions, suggested consequences. And what happened? Nothing. But one girl stands up to them, and suddenly everyone's concerned about violence in schools. The conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. Mrs. Chen entered, looking overwhelmed. "Principal Martinez?" "There are about 50 students in the main hallway holding signs. They're demanding Keisha's charges be dropped." "Signs? What kind of signs?" "Justice for Keisha. Stop protecting bullies. She defended us. And there are parents arriving too. Lots of parents." Principal Martinez closed her eyes. "Call the school board president. Tell him we have a situation." As the protest grew outside, Dr. Williams sat beside her daughter in the police station, watching her child face consequences for having the courage to stand up to injustice. "Whatever happens," Patricia whispered, "I'm proud of you." Keisha squeezed her mother's hand, knowing that the fight for her freedom was just beginning, but also knowing that she was no longer fighting alone. 2 weeks later, the night before the trial, Keisha sat at her kitchen table reviewing her testimony with Ms. Rodriguez. The lawyer had become a fierce advocate, working pro bono after seeing the evidence of systematic harassment. "Remember," Ms. Rodriguez said, tapping her pen against her legal pad, "stick to the facts. Don't let their lawyer provoke you into anger. That's exactly what they want." "What if the judge doesn't believe me?" Keisha asked, voicing the fear that had kept her awake for nights. "Then we'll appeal. But I think you'll be surprised by how much support you have." Dr. Williams entered the kitchen carrying a box of printed emails. "These are just from today," she said, setting it down heavily. "Letters of support from parents, students, even teachers from other schools who heard about the case." Ms. Rodriguez smiled. "The prosecutor's office is getting similar correspondence. Public opinion is strongly in your favor." Across town, Derek Morrison was having a very different conversation with his father's attorney, Mr. Blackwood, a sharp-dressed man with cold eyes and an expensive watch. "I want you to understand something," Blackwood said, his voice cutting through the tension in the Morrison family's living room. "If any inconsistencies emerge in your testimony tomorrow, this entire case falls apart." Derek shifted uncomfortably. "There won't be any inconsistencies." "There better not be. Because if it comes out that you've been lying, assault charges will be the least of your problems. Filing false police reports is a felony." Jake and Tommy exchanged nervous glances from their seats on the leather couch. The weight of what they'd done was beginning to sink in as the trial approached. "What about the videos?" Tommy asked weakly. "People are going to see what really happened. Videos can be taken out of context," Blackwood replied smoothly. "That's why we're emphasizing the pattern of violent behavior. 6 separate incidents make it harder to claim self-defense." Meanwhile, Brad Matthews was facing his own crisis of confidence at the Riverside Boys' emergency meeting. "I'm starting to think we made a mistake," Tyler said, pacing Connor's garage. "What if they have evidence we don't know about?" "Like what?" Brad snapped, but his voice lacked its usual authority. "Security cameras, witnesses I don't know. But this whole thing feels like it's spinning out of control." Connor nodded grimly. "My dad says if we lose this case, we could face perjury charges. He's talking about hiring our own lawyer." "Your dad's right to be worried," Tyler said, "because I heard something today. Apparently, there are going to be like 20 students testifying for her tomorrow." Back at Millbrook High, those 20 students were gathering in the school library for a final preparation session organized by Marcus Thompson and Jessica Martinez. "Remember," Marcus addressed the group, "just tell the truth about what you saw and experienced. Don't exaggerate. Don't add details you're not sure about." Sarah raised her hand. "What if they try to make us look like liars?" "Then we stay calm and stick to our stories," Jessica replied. "Because our stories are true." Danny nodded firmly. "I've been bullied by Derek for 3 years." Tomorrow, I finally get to tell someone in authority what that was like. Coach Rodriguez, who had been listening from the back of the room, stepped forward. I want you all to know how proud I am of your courage. Standing up in court takes the same kind of bravery Keisha showed in that parking lot. Will you be testifying too, Coach? Sarah asked. I will, and so will Principal Martinez, though she doesn't know it yet. The group looked surprised. Marcus frowned. She's going to testify for Keisha? She's going to testify about the harassment reports that were filed and ignored, the pattern of behavior that led to this situation. Ms. Rodriguez subpoenaed her this afternoon. As the meeting wrapped up, students hugged each other goodbye, knowing that tomorrow would determine not just Keisha's fate, but the future of their school's culture. That night, Keisha lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. 8 months ago, she'd been a quiet kid in Detroit, focused on her training and her studies. Now she was the center of a legal battle that had divided her new community. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Whatever happens tomorrow, you changed everything here. Thank you. Similar messages had been coming in all evening from students she'd helped, parents whose children had found their voices, and even strangers who had seen the viral videos and been inspired by her courage. At 2 a.m., she finally drifted off to sleep, knowing that in 8 hours she would walk into that courtroom carrying the hopes and fears of everyone who had ever been bullied, everyone who had ever been told to stay quiet, everyone who believed that standing up for what's right was worth the risk. The trial would determine her legal fate, but the real verdict had already been delivered by her community. She had given them the courage to believe in justice. The Millbrook County Courthouse buzzed with tension as supporters filled every available seat. Students, parents, and community members had arrived early, creating a line that stretched around the building. Judge Patricia Thompson, a stern woman in her 50s, called the court to order at 9 a.m. sharp. The state versus Keisha Williams, charges of assault in the 2nd degree, she announced. Mr. Blackwood, you may present your opening statement. Derek's attorney stood confidently, his expensive suit commanding attention. Your Honor, this case is about a pattern of unprovoked violence perpetrated by the defendant against 6 innocent young men. We will show that Keisha Williams systematically targeted and assaulted my clients, causing physical harm and emotional trauma. He gestured toward Derek, who sat with his head down, playing the victim. These boys were simply going about their daily lives when they became targets of the defendant's aggression. The evidence will show that she is a dangerous individual who uses her martial arts training to intimidate and harm others. Ms. Rodriguez rose for the defense, her voice clear and strong. Your Honor, what we have here is not a case of unprovoked assault, but a young woman defending herself and others from systematic harassment and bullying. The evidence will show that every action my client took was in response to escalating threats and actual physical aggression from the complainants. The prosecution called Derek first. He took the stand with practiced nervousness, recounting a fabricated version of events where Keisha had approached him aggressively in the cafeteria. I was just trying to be friendly to the new student, Derek testified, his voice quavering with false emotion. I offered to show her around, help her fit in. Instead, she became hostile and threatened me. And what happened in the parking lot? Blackwood prompted. She cornered me and my friends after school. We tried to walk away, but she followed us. When I attempted to de-escalate the situation, she attacked without warning. Ms. Rodriguez stood for cross-examination. Mr. Morrison, isn't it true that you demanded protection money from my client on her first day? I don't know what you mean. Isn't it also true that you created an edited audio recording to humiliate her in front of other students? Derek's composure slipped slightly. I never edited anything. We'll see about that. Ms. Rodriguez turned to the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to present Defense Exhibit A. The courtroom fell silent as the original, unedited recording of Keisha's English class discussion played through the speakers, followed immediately by Derek's manipulated version. The difference was stark and undeniable. Derek's face flushed red as whispers erupted throughout the courtroom. That was just a joke. A joke that you used to humiliate my client in front of 30 students? Objection, Blackwood called. But the damage was done. The prosecution's case continued with Jake and Tommy providing similar fabricated accounts, but their stories began falling apart under cross-examination. Tommy contradicted Jake's timeline, and Jake couldn't explain why security footage showed them harassing other students on the same days they claimed to be victims. When Brad Matthews took the stand representing the Riverside boys, his testimony crumbled even faster. "So you're telling this court," Ms. Rodriguez said, "that 3 high school boys were intimidated by one girl at a bus stop?" "She was aggressive," Brad mumbled. "Aggressive? Or defending 2 younger students from harassment?" Ms. Rodriguez played Jessica's unedited video, which clearly showed Brad and his friends threatening the girls before Keisha intervened. The defense began with Marcus Thompson, whose testimony about Derek's 3-year campaign of bullying was devastating. Student after student took the stand, each describing incidents of harassment that painted a clear picture of systematic intimidation. Jessica's emotional testimony about the bus stop incident brought several jurors to tears. "Tyler grabbed my friend's arm when she tried to walk away. We were scared and outnumbered. Keisha saved us." Sarah's testimony was equally powerful. Derek and his friends made school a nightmare for anyone they decided to target. Keisha gave us hope that someone would finally stand up to them. Principal Martinez's reluctant testimony about ignored harassment reports and the school's failure to protect students added institutional weight to the defense's case. Finally, Keisha took the stand herself. Her calm, measured responses contrasted sharply with the complainant's nervous evasions. "I never wanted to fight anyone," she testified. "I just wanted to go to school safely. When that wasn't possible, I defended myself and others who couldn't defend themselves." During closing arguments, Ms. Rodriguez spoke directly to the judge's sense of justice. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. My client acted in self-defense against systematic harassment and assault. To punish her for protecting herself and others would send a message that bullies can operate with impunity while their victims face criminal charges for standing up." Judge Thompson deliberated for 30 minutes before returning to the bench. The courtroom held its collective breath as she looked directly at Keisha. "After reviewing all evidence and testimony, this court finds the defendant not guilty on all charges. Furthermore, I recommend that the district attorney investigate potential perjury charges against the complainants." The courtroom erupted in cheers as Keisha hugged her mother and attorney, finally free from the legal threat that had hung over her for weeks. The gavel's final bang echoed through the courthouse as Judge Thompson's words settled over the packed courtroom. Derek Morrison sat frozen at the plaintiff's table, his face pale as the reality of perjury charges sank in. Behind him, his father's expression had shifted from confident authority to barely contained fury. "You told me this was a sure thing," Mr. Morrison hissed to Blackwood as reporters began approaching. "You said the girl didn't have a chance." Blackwood was already packing his briefcase, eager to distance himself from the disaster. "Your son lied to me about the evidence. There's nothing I could do once those recordings surfaced." Across the aisle, Jake Wilson and Tommy Bradley sat in stunned silence as their parents processed what had just happened. Mrs. Wilson's face was white with shock. "Perjury charges? That's a felony, isn't it?" "Mom, Jake started, but his mother cut him off. "We'll discuss this at home. And you'll be calling every family affected by this mess to apologize personally." Meanwhile, the Riverside boys were experiencing their own reckoning. Brad Matthews watched his carefully constructed tough guy image crumble as his father stood to leave without a word. Connor and Tyler followed behind, their bravado completely evaporated. "This is insane," Tyler whispered as they pushed through the crowd. "We could go to jail for this." "Should have thought of that before you decided to lie under oath," Connor's mother snapped, overhearing. "I raised you better than this." As the families of the complainants filed out in shame, the courthouse celebration was just beginning. Students who had testified surrounded Keisha with tears of joy and relief. "You did it!" Jessica cried, throwing her arms around Keisha. "You actually beat them!" "We did it," Keisha corrected, looking around at all the faces that had supported her. "All of us together." Dr. Williams stood nearby, watching her daughter with a mixture of pride and amazement. The quiet girl who had moved from Detroit just months ago had become a symbol of courage for an entire community. "I'm so proud of you, baby," she whispered when Keisha reached her. "Not just for winning, but for how you handled all of this." Ms. Rodriguez gathered her papers with satisfaction. In 20 years of practice, she'd rarely seen a case where justice felt so clear-cut. "The district attorney will definitely pursue perjury charges," she told the Williams family. "False police reports, lying under oath. These boys have serious legal troubles ahead." Outside the courthouse, news vans lined the street as reporters interviewed students, parents, and community members about the landmark case. The story had grown beyond Millbrook, becoming a national conversation about bullying, self-defense, and institutional failure to protect students. "This sends a message," Marcus Thompson told a reporter, flanked by dozens of students. "You can't terrorize people and then play victim when they fight back." The weeks following the trial brought swift changes to Millbrook High. Principal Martinez, chastened by her court testimony about ignored harassment reports, implemented new policies for addressing bullying complaints. Zero tolerance became actual zero tolerance, not just words in a handbook. Derek Morrison never returned to school. The perjury charges, combined with the civil suits filed by several families whose children he had harassed, led to his enrollment in a private military academy 3 states away. His parents quietly sold their house and moved, unable to face the community where their son's crimes had been exposed. Jake Wilson and Tommy Bradley pleaded guilty to filing false police reports, receiving community service and probation. Both were required to attend counseling and complete anger management courses. Jake's college scholarship was revoked, and Tommy was suspended from the football team permanently. The Riverside boys faced similar consequences. Brad Matthews was expelled and charged with multiple counts of harassment from victims who came forward after the trial. Connor and Tyler were suspended pending their own legal proceedings, their reputations in ruins. But the most significant change came in the form of Keisha's self-defense program, which was not only officially sanctioned, but expanded school-wide. 3 months after the trial, Coach Rodriguez stood in the main gymnasium, watching over 100 students participate in what was now called the Student Empowerment and Safety Program. The waiting list had grown so long that they'd added evening sessions and weekend workshops. "I never imagined it would grow this big," he told Keisha, as she led a group of freshmen through basic defensive techniques. "Neither did I," Keisha replied, adjusting a student's stance. "But I think people were ready for something like this. They just needed permission to believe they could be strong." The program had evolved beyond physical self-defense to include conflict resolution, bystander intervention training, and peer mediation. Students learned not just how to protect themselves, but how to recognize and interrupt bullying before it escalated. Sarah, who had been one of Keisha's first students, now served as a peer instructor for younger kids. "The best part isn't learning to fight," she told a group of nervous 7th graders. "It's learning that you don't have to be afraid anymore." The transformation was evident throughout the school. Hallway interactions had changed fundamentally. Students walked with more confidence, spoke up more readily, and most importantly, supported each other when problems arose. Danny, who had been Derek's frequent target, now led a peer support group for students dealing with anxiety and depression related to past bullying. Keisha didn't just teach us to defend ourselves physically, he explained to new members. She taught us that we deserve to feel safe, and that we have the power to make that happen. The ripple effects extended beyond Millbrook High. Other schools in the district requested similar programs. Anti-bullying organizations nationwide reached out for consultation. College recruiters took notice of Keisha's leadership and community impact. On a quiet Friday afternoon in spring, 6 months after the trial, Keisha found herself in the same cafeteria where Derek had first demanded protection money. But the atmosphere was completely different now. Students from different grades and social groups sat together, conversations were livelier, and the underlying tension that had once defined the space was gone. Jessica approached her table with a letter in her hand. "This came to the main office for you," she said, grinning. Keisha opened the envelope to find a handwritten note from a student at a school in California. "I saw your story on the news and started my own self-defense group here. We have 30 members now and 0 bullying incidents this semester. Thank you for showing us that we don't have to accept being treated badly." "Another one?" Marcus asked, settling into the seat across from her. "Another one," Keisha confirmed, adding the letter to a growing collection she kept in her locker. As she looked around the transformed cafeteria, then out the windows to where students were practicing confidence-building exercises in the courtyard, Keisha reflected on how much had changed since that first day when she'd refused to pay Derek's protection money. She'd come to Millbrook, hoping to avoid trouble and get through school quietly. Instead, she'd discovered that sometimes the most important battles are the ones you don't choose. They choose you. And sometimes, standing up for what's right changes not just your own life, but an entire community. The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch. As students gathered their belongings and headed to class, they moved with an energy and confidence that would have been unimaginable just months before. Keisha smiled as she packed up her own things. Her mother had been right about Millbrook being different from Detroit. It was different. It was better. And she had played a part in making it that way. Walking through hallways that once felt hostile, surrounded by students who had found their voices and their strength, Keisha Williams knew that some fights are worth everything you put into them. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please like the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.
Exit the vehicle now. This car is flagged as stolen. Officer Brentwood's hand rests on his holster as he stalks toward the black Mercedes. Judge Elaine Washington watches him through her mirror, pulse steady despite the flashing lights that have forced her to the curb 5 blocks from her own courthouse. His voice cuts through the morning air, sharp with accusation. The cruiser's dashboard camera blinks red, silently recording what's about to become the biggest mistake of Brentwood's career. 20 years on the federal bench has taught Washington when to speak and when to let others bury themselves. She reaches deliberately toward her purse. Brentwood tenses, barking orders faster now. The second cruiser's doors swing open, backup arriving for a threat that doesn't exist. Washington's fingers close around her federal judicial ID. She knows exactly how this ends. They don't. Not yet. "I said don't move!" Officer Brentwood shouts, knuckles whitening around his weapon. Judge Washington freezes, ID card half withdrawn from her purse. The morning commuters slow their vehicles, eyes drawn to the confrontation. Phones emerge from windows, recording devices capturing what the dashboard camera already sees. "Officer, I'm simply retrieving my identification as requested," she says, voice level despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "I'm Judge Elaine Washington of the Federal District Court." Officer Reynolds exits the second cruiser, approaching with visible uncertainty. His eyes dart between his partner and the composed woman in the driver's seat. "Brentwood, maybe we should—" "She matches the description." Brentwood cuts him off, reaching for his radio. "Dispatch, requesting additional units for a possible stolen vehicle recovery." What these officers don't know will change everything. Just yesterday, Judge Washington delivered the landmark ruling in United States versus Brenner, establishing new standards for police conduct during traffic stops. Her 30-year ascent from military intelligence officer to JAG Corps to the federal bench has prepared her for moments precisely like this one. She counts silently to 10, planning 3 moves ahead. The constitutional violations pile up with each passing second. No reasonable suspicion, no proper identification check, escalation without cause. Reynolds shifts his weight, discomfort evident as more civilians gather. The tension in his shoulders suggests he recognizes the situation spiraling beyond protocol. "Ma'am, please exit the vehicle slowly," he says, his tone markedly different from his partner's. Judge Washington complies, movements deliberate. The morning breeze catches her silk blouse as she steps onto the asphalt, standing tall despite the officer's attempts to diminish her. Her court credentials remain visible in her hand, sunlight catching the federal seal. The courthouse expects her in 20 minutes for a police misconduct hearing. The irony isn't lost on her as she observes Officer Brentwood's name tag, memorizing every detail for what will inevitably follow. "Place your hands on the vehicle," Brentwood demands, ignoring the identification she presents. Judge Washington places her palms against the warm metal of her car, dignity intact despite the humiliation. The real judgment has yet to begin. "I am Judge Elaine Washington of the Federal District Court," she repeats, enunciating each word as Officer Brentwood pats her down with unnecessary thoroughness. "You are making a significant error, officer." Brentwood scoffs, his breath hot against her neck. "Everyone's innocent, everyone's important. Turn around slowly." The gathering crowd murmurs as Judge Washington complies, her eyes scanning the bystanders. Across the street, a young Asian man in a tailored suit watches with intense focus. Thomas Chen, her former clerk and current assistant district attorney, locks eyes with her. She gives an imperceptible nod. Chen immediately pulls out his phone, fingers moving swiftly across the screen as he begins recording. Judge Washington notes the precise time, 9:17 a.m. Every procedural violation adds to the record that will soon become evidence. "Check her ID, man," Officer Reynolds suggests, voice low. His discomfort grows as passing cars slow to witness the scene. "After we secure the situation," Brentwood dismisses, reaching for his handcuffs. The metal catches the morning light as he unclips them from his belt. Judge Washington's mind flashes back to law school, to her first brush with systemic prejudice when a professor suggested she might be more comfortable in family law rather than constitutional theory. She graduated top of her class, authored 3 landmark papers on Fourth Amendment protections, and went on to become the youngest federal judge in the district's history. The handcuffs click shut around her wrists. The sound echoes in her ears like a gavel striking wood. "Officer Brentwood, badge number 4572, you are currently violating Code 18, Section 242, regarding deprivation of rights under color of law," she states calmly. "Officer Reynolds, badge number 6309, you are witnessing this violation." Brentwood tenses. "How do you know our badge numbers?" "I pay attention," she replies simply. Across the street, Attorney Chen slides his phone into his pocket, evidence secured. He makes a call, speaking urgently into the receiver. Judge Washington recognizes the familiar rhythm of his crisis protocol. 3 people will be notified: the Chief Justice, the District Attorney, and her judicial clerk. "Search the vehicle," Brentwood instructs Reynolds, who hesitates before complying. Washington watches as Reynolds opens her car door, carefully examining the interior. His movements lack his partner's aggressive certainty. When he opens the glove compartment, he finds her vehicle registration and proof of insurance. both clearly displaying her name. "Brentwood," Reynolds calls, holding up the documents. "These look legitimate." "Could be forged," Brentwood dismisses without looking. "Check the trunk." The radio on Brentwood's shoulder crackles with dispatch requesting an update. He steps away to respond, giving Judge Washington a moment to assess the growing situation. 3 police cruisers now block the street. Morning traffic backs up in both directions. At least 7 bystanders record the scene on their phones. She remembers the exact statute they're violating. She wrote the opinion on it last year. Simmons v's Department of Public Safety established that officers must check identification before detention when no immediate danger exists. Reynolds pops the trunk and goes still. "Brentwood, you need to see this." Inside the trunk rest Judge Washington's judicial robes, carefully hung in a garment bag with the federal court seal visible on the breast pocket. Next to it sits her briefcase containing case files for today's docket. Brentwood glances inside, unmoved. "Anyone can buy a costume." "This doesn't feel right," Reynolds mutters, lifting the garment bag for closer inspection. "I am invoking my right to counsel," Judge Washington announces clearly, ensuring the dashboard camera captures her words. "I am also informing you that you are currently detaining a federal judge on her way to court without cause, without checking readily available identification, and after being informed of my position." Brentwood's radio crackles again. This time, a different voice comes through, deeper, authoritative. "Unit 47, this is Lieutenant Foster. What's your current situation with the traffic stop at Maple and 5th? Brentwood frowns at the unexpected inquiry. "Standard stolen vehicle procedure, Lieutenant. Suspect detained, vehicle being searched. Has identification been verified?" The lieutenant's question hangs in the air. Before Brentwood can respond, a 3rd police cruiser arrives. Lieutenant Diane Foster steps out, her 20 years of experience evident in her measured movements. She surveys the scene with practiced efficiency. The handcuffed woman in professional attire, the growing crowd, the open Mercedes trunk displaying judicial robes. "I requested backup, not supervision," Brentwood mutters as Foster approaches. "And yet, here I am," Foster replies evenly. She turns to Judge Washington, maintaining a respectful distance. "Ma'am, I'm Lieutenant Foster. May I ask your name?" "Judge Elaine Washington, Federal District Court, Eastern Division," Washington responds, standing straight despite the handcuffs. "My identification is in my purse on the passenger seat, which I was attempting to retrieve when Officer Brentwood escalated this situation." Foster's eyes narrow slightly. She recognizes the name. "Officer Reynolds, please retrieve the purse." As Reynolds complies, bringing the purse to Foster rather than Brentwood, the lieutenant addresses Washington again. "Judge, may I have your permission to open your purse and verify your identification?" "You have my consent," Washington confirms, noting Foster's procedural correctness, a stark contrast to Brentwood's approach. Foster carefully opens the purse, locating the wallet containing Washington's judicial credentials and driver's license. She examines both, her expression remaining professional but her eyes widening slightly as she confirms the woman's identity. "Officers, remove these restraints immediately," Foster orders, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Lieutenant, this vehicle matches the description," Brentwood begins. "Remove the restraints, officer. Now!" Foster's command cuts through his protest. The crowd watches as Reynolds quickly moves to uncuff Judge Washington, murmuring an apology as he does so. Brentwood stands rigid, jaw clenched in defiance. "This department is making a mistake," he insists. "No, Officer Brentwood," Judge Washington says as she rubs her wrists. "You've made several mistakes this morning, and now you're about to learn the consequences." Across the street, Attorney Chen ends his call and nods confidently to Washington. The wheels of justice have begun turning, not in the direction Brentwood anticipated. "Please step this way, Judge Washington," Lieutenant Foster says, gesturing toward her cruiser and away from the crowd. "I'd like to speak with you privately." Brentwood steps forward. "Lieutenant, I haven't completed my investigation. The vehicle still needs... Officer Brentwood, secure the scene and remain by your cruiser. Foster interrupts, her voice steel-wrapped in procedure. Officer Reynolds, join us, please. The mid-morning sun beats down on the asphalt as Washington follows Foster to the command vehicle. Her court session begins in 30 minutes. The judicial clerk has likely already notified the chambers about her delay. I apologize for this situation, Judge, Foster says once they're beside her cruiser. I need to document what's happened here. Officer Reynolds, please start a new incident report. Reynolds pulls out his department tablet, fingers hovering over the screen. The dashboard camera in Foster's vehicle blinks red, adding another layer of documentation to the morning's events. Lieutenant, I was on my way to preside over Hernandez versus Metropolitan Police Department, Washington explains. A case concerning police misconduct during traffic stops. Foster's expression remains professional, but her eyes reveal understanding of the implications. I'm familiar with the case, Your Honor. It's received significant attention within the department. I need my vehicle released immediately, Washington continues, and I require the badge numbers of all officers involved, including dispatch recordings from the initial call. Reynolds types rapidly, documenting every word. Foster nods, making her own notes on a small notepad. Officer, what was the exact description of the stolen vehicle you were looking for? Foster asks Reynolds. He consults his tablet. Dispatch reported a black luxury sedan, possibly a BMW, stolen from the Highland District last night. Partial plate ending in JKW. And Judge Washington's vehicle? Mercedes-Benz S-Class, current year model. Plate ending in RHT. Reynolds answers, the discrepancy now obvious. Not even close, Foster observes. She turns back to Washington. Judge, would you like transportation to the courthouse, or would you prefer to drive your own vehicle? Before Washington can answer, Officer Brentwood approaches, radio in hand. Lieutenant, dispatch is requesting we bring the suspect in for formal questioning. Protocol for stolen vehicles requires... Judge Washington is not a suspect, Foster states firmly. And this is not a stolen vehicle. We need to verify that at the station, Brentwood insists. Washington watches the power struggle unfold, noting Brentwood's unusual persistence despite mounting evidence of his error. His personnel file will make interesting reading. Officer Brentwood, return to your vehicle and stand by, Foster orders. The chief wants this handled by the book, Brentwood counters, revealing his presumed protection. The lieutenant's eyes narrow. Which is precisely what I'm doing. Foster turns to Washington. Judge, I apologize, but to resolve this matter completely, would you consent to accompanying us to the station? I can personally expedite the process and ensure you reach your courtroom as quickly as possible. Washington considers her options. Going to the station extends the record of this incident, creating more witnesses and documentation. Strategic patience has served her well for decades. I'll come to the station on one condition, she agrees. I want to make one phone call now, not upon arrival. Of course, Foster nods. Washington pulls out her phone and dials her clerk. Marcus, please inform Chief Justice Rodriguez that I've been detained by Officers Brentwood and Reynolds during a traffic stop. Lieutenant Foster is currently attempting to resolve the situation. The Hernandez hearing will need to be delayed by 1 hour. She listens briefly before continuing. Yes, exactly like the Hernandez case. Please have Thomas Chen meet me at the central precinct with the case files. Another pause. Thank you. The dashboard camera captures every word as Washington ends the call. Brentwood's face tightens as he begins to grasp the magnitude of his mistake. She can ride with me, Foster tells Reynolds. Please secure her vehicle and have it brought to the station. As Washington slides into the back of Foster's cruiser, the suffocating heat wraps around her. Through the window, she watches Brentwood gesturing angrily at Reynolds, radio clutched in his white-knuckled grip. Lieutenant Foster's phone buzzes with a text from the Chief Justice. The screen illuminates briefly, displaying a message Washington can't quite read. Foster's measured composure cracks for just a moment, revealing genuine concern as she slides into the driver's seat. Judge Washington, Foster says quietly as they pull away from the scene. "I believe we have a significant situation developing." Central Precinct buzzes with morning activity as Lieutenant Foster escorts Judge Washington through the main entrance. Officers glance up from their desks, conversations halting mid-sentence at the unusual sight. Foster guides Washington not to the standard processing area, but directly to the administrative conference room. "Please wait here, Judge Washington." "I'll handle the paperwork personally," Foster says, her professionalism unwavering despite the tension radiating through the building. As Foster exits, Washington takes stock of her surroundings. The conference room offers a clear view of the bullpen through interior windows. Officers gather in small clusters, whispered conversations punctuated by glances in her direction. Brentwood arrives, striding purposefully toward the chief's office. Washington checks her watch, 9:42 a.m. Her courtroom sits empty while attorneys and spectators wonder about the unusual delay. The door opens as Foster returns with a tablet and forms. "Judge, I've pulled the complete dispatch record. There are discrepancies I'd like to address." "What kind of discrepancies, Lieutenant?" Washington asks, though she already suspects the answer. Foster places the tablet between them, displaying the morning's dispatch log. The stolen vehicle report came in at 8:17 a.m. A black BMW 5 Series with partial plate JKW, reportedly taken from the Highland District garage. She swipes to the next screen. "Officer Brentwood called in your plates at 9:14 a.m. Dispatch responded that your vehicle, Mercedes S-Class, plate RHT, was not flagged in the system." "Yet he proceeded to detain me," Washington observes. "Yes," Foster confirms, making a note. "He requested backup after dispatch cleared your vehicle." A memory surfaces in Washington's mind. Foster attending a community policing seminar Washington had conducted last year. The lieutenant had asked thoughtful questions about constitutional protections during stops and searches. "3 years ago, I presided over Williams v. State," Washington says. "An officer detained a black business owner despite dispatch clearing the vehicle. The department settled for $1.2 million. Foster nods slowly. "I remember the case well. It led to our revised traffic stop protocols." "Protocols Officer Brentwood appears to have ignored," Washington adds. The station erupts into chaos as a name appears on the computer screen at the dispatch desk visible through the window. An officer points to Washington's name on the monitor, urgency in his movements. The desk sergeant grabs a phone, punching numbers with unusual haste. "Lieutenant, I need to see Officer Brentwood's record," Washington says, "particularly any complaints regarding traffic stops of minority drivers." Foster hesitates. "That would require authorization from—" The door swings open as Chief of Police Martinez enters, face drawn with concern. "Judge Washington, I've just been informed of this situation." "Chief Martinez," Washington acknowledges, "I believe we have a serious matter to discuss." "Indeed," he agrees, taking a seat. "Lieutenant Foster has briefed me on the initial details. I want to assure you this incident will be thoroughly investigated." "I was on my way to court, Chief Martinez," Washington explains, "to preside over Hernandez v. Metropolitan Police Department, a case alleging systemic bias in traffic stops and searches." The chief's expression tightens almost imperceptibly. "I'm familiar with the case. As the federal judge assigned to evaluate whether your department requires Justice Department oversight," Washington continues, "I find the timing of this morning's incident noteworthy." Lieutenant Foster steps away, phone in hand, creating professional distance from the conversation while remaining within earshot. "Judge Washington, I want to personally apologize for any inconvenience," Martinez offers. "We can have you at the courthouse within 15 minutes. "This is considerably more than an inconvenience, Chief Martinez," Washington corrects him. "This is a direct violation of my Fourth Amendment rights by officers under your command officers who ignored dispatcher confirmation that my vehicle was not the one reported stolen." Martinez's carefully maintained composure slips. The dispatcher confirmed your vehicle wasn't stolen? Before the stop escalated? Lieutenant Foster has the complete transcript, Washington confirms. Officer Brentwood requested backup after receiving that confirmation. Foster returns to the table. Chief, I've confirmed the timeline. Dispatch cleared the judge's vehicle before Officer Brentwood called for backup or removed her from the vehicle. Where is Officer Brentwood now? Martinez asks, tension evident in his voice. Waiting in your outer office, Foster reports, along with Officer Reynolds. Washington observes the shift in dynamics, Martinez reassessing the situation. Foster's allegiance to proper procedure overriding departmental solidarity, Brentwood isolated by his actions. Chief Martinez, I need to make something absolutely clear, Washington says, leaning forward slightly. This incident will be thoroughly documented not just for my personal vindication, but because it demonstrates precisely the pattern of behavior alleged in the Hernandez case. Martinez nods grimly. I understand, Judge. Do you? Washington challenges. Because Officer Brentwood's actions this morning may have just provided the evidence needed to place your entire department under federal oversight. The chief's phone buzzes with an incoming call. He checks the screen, his expression darkening further. It's the mayor. You should take that, Washington suggests. Meanwhile, I'll require the complete personnel files for both officers involved. All body camera and dashboard footage, dispatch recordings, and witness statements from civilians at the scene. 3 judges and the district attorney are now on a conference call, their secretaries frantically rescheduling dockets to address the unfolding situation. Washington knows the system is mobilizing, not just for her, but for what her experience represents. Lieutenant Foster, Washington says as the chief steps away to take his call, you recognize the procedural violations immediately. Why did you respond to the scene personally? Foster hesitates before answering. Your vehicle passed me 2 blocks before the stop. I recognized you from your community lectures on constitutional policing. When I heard the call for backup at that location, she pauses. I had concerns. You knew Officer Brentwood's history, Washington concludes. I've worked with him for 3 years, Foster acknowledges. There have been patterns. Documented patterns? Washington presses. 7 complaints filed, 2 formal reprimands, Foster confirms. All involving minority drivers, all dismissed due to lack of evidence or witnesses unwilling to testify. The atmosphere shifts as Attorney Thomas Chen appears in the doorway, court documents tucked under his arm and determination in his stride. Judge Washington, he greets her formally, maintaining professional distance despite their years of collaboration. The Chief Justice has called an emergency meeting of the Judicial Council. They've temporarily reassigned the Hernandez case pending resolution of this morning's incident. Reassigned or delayed? Washington asks, noting the critical distinction. Reassigned to you specifically in your capacity as head of the Judicial Conduct Committee, Chen clarifies, with expanded scope to include this incident as evidence. Lieutenant Foster's gaze shifts between them, understanding dawning in her eyes. The booking officer freezes, fingers hovering over the keyboard as he processes the information. Chief Martinez returns, his conversation with the mayor evidently concluded. Judge Washington, how would you like to proceed? The courthouse clock strikes 10. Her trial was scheduled to begin 5 minutes ago. In the judicial chambers, clerks field increasingly urgent calls from attorneys present for the Hernandez hearing. The empty bench speaks volumes to those gathered in the courtroom. Back at the precinct, Chief Martinez leads Judge Washington, Lieutenant Foster, and Attorney Chen into his private office. The Venetian blinds slice the morning sunlight into thin stripes across the polished desk. Judge Washington, I want to resolve this situation appropriately, Martinez begins, his tone calibrated for damage control. Officer Brentwood's actions were clearly inconsistent with department protocols. They were inconsistent with federal law. Washington corrects him, placing her judicial credentials on his desk. The gold emblem catches the light, a reminder of her authority that transcends the police department's jurisdiction. Martinez nods reluctantly. Yes, of course. I've instructed Internal Affairs to begin an immediate investigation. That's insufficient, Chief, Washington replies. This incident falls under federal purview now. Chen opens his briefcase, extracting a court order signed by the Chief Justice himself. This authorizes immediate preservation of all evidence related to this morning's incident, including Officer Brentwood's complete service record, all communications preceding the traffic stop, and station security footage from today. Martinez's face drains of color as he listens to his phone. The voice on the other end speaks urgently enough that Washington catches fragments, Federal Review and Justice Department notification. Outside the office, officers move with renewed purpose. The department's legal counsel arrives, briefcase in hand, jacket hastily buttoned. The atmosphere shifts from routine to crisis management. Washington checks her watch again, 10:17 a.m. The Hernandez attorneys wait, unaware that their case has just acquired powerful new evidence. Chief Martinez, Washington says, I'd like to speak with Officers Brentwood and Reynolds separately. Of course, Martinez agrees too quickly. Lieutenant Foster can arrange that immediately. As Foster steps out to organize the interviews, Washington notices a memo on Martinez's desk, a department-wide body camera initiative she had mandated in her ruling last month. The implementation date? Tomorrow. Chen leans close to Washington, voice low. Judge, the courthouse security team is reviewing footage from 2 weeks ago. Officer Brentwood was seen outside your chambers, apparently off duty. This new information slots into place in Washington's mental framework. Not just a random stop, but potentially targeted surveillance. The pattern expands, implications deepening. Through the office window, she observes Brentwood pacing in the waiting area, his confident demeanor now fractured by uncertainty. Reynolds sits separately, head bowed as he reviews his notes. Chief Martinez's face suggests he just received troubling news, Washington murmurs to Chen. The department's already under review for 3 excessive force complaints, Chen confirms. This incident could trigger the federal oversight they've been fighting to avoid. Foster returns, tablet in hand. Interview rooms are ready, Judge Washington. Officer Reynolds has agreed to speak with you first. Martinez's phone buzzes again. The chief's expression shifts from concern to alarm as he views the message. What is it? Washington asks, though she already suspects. The Attorney General's office, Martinez answers, voice tight. They're sending a representative. The department's wall clock ticks loudly in the sudden silence. Every minute that passes reshapes the balance of power in the room. Chief Martinez closes the door to his office, face grim. Judge Washington sits across from Officer Reynolds in interview room 2, Lieutenant Foster standing sentinel by the door. The stark fluorescent lighting casts harsh shadows across Reynolds' increasingly troubled expression. Officer Reynolds, Washington begins, please walk me through this morning's events from your perspective. Reynolds straightens his posture, eyes fixed on the middle distance. We received a call about a stolen vehicle at approximately 8:45 a.m. Black luxury sedan, partial plate ending in JKW. And when did you join Officer Brentwood at the scene of my stop? Washington asks. I arrived at 9:16 a.m. as backup, Reynolds confirms. Officer Brentwood had already initiated contact with you. Washington leans forward slightly. Did Officer Brentwood inform you that dispatch had already cleared my vehicle before you arrived? Reynolds blinks, surprise evident. No, Your Honor. He stated it was a confirmed stolen vehicle match. Foster makes a note on her tablet, the soft tapping of her fingers punctuating the silence. Officer Reynolds, Washington continues, did you personally verify my identification when it was presented? No, Your Honor, he admits. Officer Brentwood instructed me to search the vehicle while he maintained control of the situation. And when you discovered my judicial robes and credentials in the vehicle? I informed Officer Brentwood immediately, Reynolds says, discomfort visible in his posture. He dismissed them as possibly costume items. Washington nods, allowing silence to fill the room. The interview room camera records every word, every expression. Through the observation window, Chief Martinez watches with growing concern. One final question, Officer Reynolds. Have you witnessed Officer Brentwood conduct similar stops of minority drivers before? Reynolds hesitates, the internal conflict evident in his expression. Officer Brentwood has his own approach to traffic enforcement. That's not what I asked, Washington presses. Yes, Reynolds finally admits. I've observed him conduct stops of minority drivers with heightened scrutiny. Thank you for your honesty, Officer Reynolds, Washington concludes. Lieutenant Foster will take your formal statement. As Reynolds exits, Attorney Chen enters with a laptop. Judge, I've received the dispatch recordings and Officer Brentwood's body camera footage from this morning. Washington nods to Foster. Please bring in Officer Brentwood. While they wait, Chen places the laptop before Washington. The time-stamped dispatch record contradicts everything Officer Brentwood claimed. Dispatch clearly informed him your vehicle wasn't the stolen BMW before he escalated the stop. The door opens as Officer Brentwood enters, confident stride now reduced to cautious steps. He takes the seat across from Washington, eyes challenging despite his precarious position. Officer Brentwood, Washington begins, voice perfectly calm. I'd like to understand why you continued to detain me after dispatch confirmed my vehicle was not stolen. I had reasonable suspicion based on the vehicle description, he replies automatically. Washington allows the statement to hang in the air before responding. The stolen vehicle was a black BMW with partial plate JKW. I drive a Mercedes with plate RHT. Please explain the basis for your reasonable suspicion. Brentwood shifts in his chair. The suspect description? There was no suspect description in the stolen vehicle report, Foster interrupts, referring to her tablet. The BMW was stolen from a parking garage overnight. No suspects were identified. Sweat beads on Brentwood's forehead as he recalibrates. I believe the vehicle could still be connected to the theft. Based on what evidence? Washington asks. Officer instinct, Brentwood replies, jaw tight. Years of experience. Washington studies him for a moment. Officer Brentwood, are you aware that I served 8 years in military intelligence before attending law school? That I specialized in detecting deception patterns? His eyes widen slightly, uncertainty flashing across his face. Your body language, vocal stress patterns, and pupil dilation all indicate deliberate deception, Washington continues. Now let me ask again. Why did you escalate a routine traffic stop after dispatch cleared my vehicle? I want union representation, Brentwood demands suddenly. That's your right for departmental disciplinary matters, Washington acknowledges. However, this interview concerns potential federal civil rights violations, which fall under my judicial purview. Chen turns the laptop screen toward Brentwood, displaying the dispatch log. The timestamp shows dispatch cleared Judge Washington's vehicle at 9:12 a.m. You called for backup at 9:14 a.m. claiming a confirmed stolen vehicle. Brentwood's expression hardens as he recognizes the evidence mounting against him. I want to speak with the chief. Chief Martinez is currently speaking with the Attorney General's office, Foster informs him, regarding potential federal oversight of this department. The pen scratching on incident reports fills the momentary silence. Chairs scrape across the floor as Foster adjusts her position, standing directly behind Brentwood. Officer Brentwood, Washington says finally, did you know who I was when you initiated the traffic stop this morning? The question hangs in the air, loaded with implications. Brentwood's silence provides its own answer. Interview concluded at 10:43 a.m., Foster states for the record, stopping the recording. Judge Washington, your vehicle has been brought around front, Chief Martinez announces, holding the station's front door open. The midday sun bathes the precinct steps as Washington emerges from the building's shadow. She straightens her jacket and steps into the sunlight. The release feels temporary, a brief respite before the storm that's building. Attorney Chen walks beside her, his phone buzzing continuously with messages from the courthouse. The Chief Justice himself waits on the courthouse steps, Chen informs her, scrolling through the cascade of notifications. The entire Judicial Council has convened an emergency session. Washington nods, taking a deep, cleansing breath. The events of the morning have unfolded with remarkable speed, yet the most significant consequences remain ahead. Thomas, I want the complete personnel files for both officers before the hearing, she instructs, and subpoena Officer Brentwood's personal phone records for the past month. Already in process, Chen confirms. The Chief Justice granted expedited discovery given the circumstances. Lieutenant Foster approaches with Washington's car keys. Judge Washington, I've had your vehicle thoroughly inspected. Everything's in order. Thank you, Lieutenant, Washington acknowledges. Your professionalism this morning is noted. Foster hesitates, then adds quietly, I've submitted a formal statement regarding Officer Brentwood's pattern of conduct. I should have done it sooner. Washington studies the lieutenant's face, recognizing the courage such an action requires within police culture. The timing of your statement is significant, Lieutenant. It demonstrates integrity when faced with clear misconduct. Foster nods once, understanding the weight of Washington's words. As Washington slides behind the wheel of her Mercedes, she catches sight of Officer Brentwood exiting the station with his union representative. His face darkens when he spots her. The look contains more than anger. There's fear now, the dawning realization that his actions have consequences beyond his control. Chen's phone rings with a call from the courthouse. Yes, we're departing now, he confirms. Judge Washington will arrive in approximately 12 minutes. Washington starts the engine, mentally shifting from wronged citizen back to federal judge. The transformation feels seamless. Both roles demand precision, patience, and an unwavering commitment to justice. Thomas, she says as they pull away from the precinct, it's time to bring everything to light. The federal courthouse rises like a marble sentinel against the midday sky. News vans already crowd the plaza, reporters positioning themselves for the unfolding story. Judge Washington enters through the judicial chamber's entrance, avoiding the media gauntlet. Chief Justice Rodriguez meets her in the private corridor, his typically stoic expression replaced by genuine concern. Elaine, this is unprecedented. Are you certain you want to proceed today? Absolutely certain, Washington confirms, removing her coat. The Hernandez case and this morning's incident are now inextricably linked. The courtroom is at capacity, Rodriguez informs her. Every law enforcement official in the city seems to be present. Washington nods, unsurprised. Good. This needs witnesses. In the robing room, she slips into her judicial garments, the same robes Officer Brentwood had dismissed as a costume. The heavy black fabric settles on her shoulders with familiar weight. She checks her appearance in the mirror, adjusting the white collar that contrasts sharply against the obsidian fabric. Judge, Chen says from the doorway, everyone's assembled. Chief Martinez arrived with department counsel. Officers Brentwood and Reynolds are present with union representation. Lieutenant Foster just took her seat. And our evidence? Ready for presentation, Chen confirms. Sequential and comprehensive. Washington takes a steadying breath. 20 years on the federal bench has prepared her for moments precisely like this one, when the law must stand firm against those who abuse their authority. Then let's proceed, she says, stepping toward the courtroom. The bailiff's voice rings out as she enters. All rise. The United States District Court for the Eastern District is now in session. The Honorable Judge Elaine Washington presiding. The packed courtroom rises in unison. Washington surveys the assembly as she takes her seat at the bench. Chief Martinez sits with his legal team at the front. Officers Brentwood and Reynolds occupy seats behind them, expressions tense. Lieutenant Foster sits separately, spine straight, gaze forward. Be seated, Washington instructs, her voice carrying effortlessly through the chamber. This court now addresses the consolidated matters of Hernandez Vaz, Metropolitan Police Department, and the incident involving this judge earlier today. She places her hands flat on the bench, leaning forward slightly. For those unfamiliar with federal procedure, I will explain my decision to preside over this matter despite being personally involved. Federal judiciary rules permit a judge to hear cases involving themselves when the matter concerns the integrity of the judicial process itself. The courtroom hangs on her every word, the silence absolute. Moreover, she continues, as my military and judicial records will confirm, I am uniquely qualified to evaluate the constitutional implications of today's events. Washington nods to Chen, who activates the courtroom's display system. Her military service record appears on screens throughout the chamber. Before my appointment to the federal bench, I served 8 years in military intelligence with the United States Army, achieving the rank of major. I graduated first in my class from West Point, specialized in counterintelligence at Fort Huachuca, and served as legal counsel for the Judge Advocate General's Corps. The screens transition to her judicial appointment records. Following my military service, I graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Law, clerked for the Supreme Court, and have served on this bench for 20 years. I currently chair the Judicial Conduct Committee for this district. Washington pauses, allowing her qualifications to register fully with the audience. Officer Brentwood shifts uncomfortably in his seat. This morning's incident provides a unique opportunity to examine police conduct not through second-hand testimony, but through direct evidence. Mr. Chen, please proceed with Exhibit 1. The courtroom falls silent as the video begins to play. Dashboard camera footage captures the entire traffic stop from initial approach to Washington's removal from her vehicle. The crystal-clear audio records every word of the interaction. Note the timestamp, Washington directs as the video continues. At 9:12 a.m., dispatch informs Officer Brentwood that my vehicle is not the stolen BMW. 17 seconds later, he requests backup for a confirmed stolen vehicle. The attorneys representing the police department exchange concerned glances. This direct contradiction cannot be explained away. As the video concludes, Chen transitions to the next exhibit bystander footage from multiple angles, showing the escalation from additional perspectives. These recordings were voluntarily provided by 7 citizens who witnessed the incident, Washington explains. They corroborate the dashboard camera footage and provide additional angles not captured by police equipment. Officer Brentwood's union representative leans over, whispering urgently in his ear. The officer's face has lost its confident defiance, replaced by the pallor of realization. Exhibit 3, Washington continues, the complete dispatch recordings. The audio plays clearly through the courtroom speakers. Unit 47, vehicle plate RHT shows registered to Elaine Washington, no flags or alerts. Not a match for the stolen BMW. Followed by Brentwood's response. Dispatch, I have a confirmed stolen vehicle, requesting backup at Maple and 5th. The direct contradiction hangs in the air, indefensible. Exhibit 4, Washington announces. Officer Brentwood's personnel file. Chen displays the document on the courtroom screens, key sections highlighted for emphasis. This file contains 12 civilian complaints over 3 years, all filed by minority drivers alleging improper stops, excessive force, or unlawful searches. All 12 complaints were dismissed due to insufficient evidence or witness credibility issues. Washington looks directly at Chief Martinez. However, when cross-referenced with dispatch records, a pattern emerges. In 9 of these incidents, Officer Brentwood proceeded with detention after dispatch had cleared the vehicles or individuals in question. The chief's expression remains carefully neutral, but his attorney scribbles notes with increasing urgency. Exhibit 5, Washington continues, security footage from this courthouse dated 2 weeks ago. The video shows Officer Brentwood, in plain clothes, observing the judicial entrance. He follows Washington to her car, photographing her vehicle with his personal phone. Officer Brentwood was not on duty that day, Washington notes. nor was there any legitimate police business that would bring him to this courthouse. She turns her attention directly to Brentwood. Officer, would you care to explain your presence at this federal building while off duty and your apparent surveillance of a federal judge? The union representative places a restraining hand on Brentwood's arm, preventing him from responding. Perhaps this will clarify matters, Washington continues, nodding to Chen. Exhibit 6. Officer Brentwood's phone records obtained by a federal subpoena 30 minutes ago. The records appear on screen, specific numbers highlighted. These records show multiple calls between Officer Brentwood and Roger Simmons, the defendant in last month's police brutality case over which I presided. Mr. Simmons, formerly an officer with Metropolitan Police Department, was found liable for $3.2 million in damages. A murmur ripples through the courtroom as the connections become clear. The timing of these calls immediately before and after my ruling, and again yesterday following my decision in the departmental review case, suggests coordination that extends beyond Officer Brentwood's individual actions. Washington turns her attention to Lieutenant Foster. Lieutenant, based on your experience and the evidence presented, would you characterize Officer Brentwood's actions this morning as consistent with department policy? Foster stands, her response clear and unwavering. No, Your Honor. His actions violated multiple departmental protocols and, in my professional assessment, constitutional protections against unreasonable search and seizure. Thank you, Lieutenant, Washington acknowledges. Your testimony is noted. Officer Brentwood's personnel file lands with a thud on the bench as Washington picks up the thick folder. This court now faces a critical question, she continues. Was this morning's incident an isolated abuse of authority or evidence of systemic failure within the Metropolitan Police Department? She surveys the courtroom, her gaze lingering on each key figure. The Hernandez case alleges that minority drivers face disproportionate stops, searches, and detentions even when dispatch clears their vehicles, even when identification is presented, even when no reasonable suspicion exists. Washington leans forward. My personal experience this morning demonstrated precisely the pattern alleged in the Hernandez complaint. The evidence is not merely compelling, it is conclusive. She straightens, her decision made. This court finds sufficient evidence to expand the Hernandez inquiry into a comprehensive department-wide review under federal oversight. Chief Martinez rises to object, but Washington continues. The Department of Justice will appoint special monitors to oversee all aspects of Metropolitan Police Department operations for a period of not less than 3 years. All traffic stop data will be independently analyzed for pattern and practice violations. She turns to Officer Brentwood. As for the constitutional violations committed against this court, I am recusing myself from those determinations. Those matters will be referred to Judge Williams in the Western District for appropriate action. Judge Washington reads the final affidavit, her voice unwavering. This court retains jurisdiction over the implementation of reforms and will require quarterly progress reports. The first report is due in 90 days. She lifts her gavel. Officer Brentwood is immediately suspended pending termination proceedings. Officer Reynolds is placed on administrative leave pending further investigation. The gavel strikes with finality. This court is adjourned until tomorrow at 9 a.m., when we will begin structuring the oversight framework. As Washington rises, the courtroom remains standing in stunned silence. Through the windows, television cameras capture the moment justice realigns, not through violence or vengeance, but through the methodical application of law. 6 months later, recruits file into the Academy auditorium. The room buzzes with anticipation as cadets take their seats. Academy manuals open on their laps. The cover reads, Constitutional Policing, Rights, Responsibilities, and Reform. Judge Elaine Washington stands at the podium, her judicial robes exchanged for a tailored suit. The projector displays dashboard camera footage, her own traffic stop, now standard teaching material for every officer in training. Your badge grants you authority, she tells the attentive cadets. But authority without accountability becomes tyranny. The back doors open as Lieutenant Foster, now Captain Foster, enters. Her new insignia catches the light as she takes her place at the side of the stage. Under her leadership, the department's newly formed Accountability Division has begun reshaping police culture from within. 6 months ago, a traffic stop exposed systemic failures within this department, Washington continues. Today, I'm here to discuss the transformations those failures have produced. She advances the presentation to display the department's revised metrics. Complaints down 47%. Unlawful detentions reduced by 62%. Community trust ratings improving steadily month over month. Change is difficult, Washington acknowledges, particularly when it requires examining deeply ingrained practices. But necessary change produces justice, not just for citizens, but for officers committed to honorable service. In the front row, Chief Martinez listens with newfound humility. The federal oversight initially viewed as punishment has become an opportunity for departmental renewal. His resistance has transformed into cautious collaboration. The incident that catalyzed these reforms wasn't isolated, Washington explains. It represented a pattern that had developed over years, a pattern that undermined constitutional protections and eroded community trust. She advances to the next slide. Officer Brentwood's termination notice beside his subsequent federal indictment for civil rights violations. The former officer now awaits trial, his connection to the previously convicted Roger Simmons fully exposed through phone records and financial transactions. Officer Reynolds chose a different path, Washington notes, displaying his statement of cooperation. By acknowledging his failure to intervene and committing to reform, he exemplifies the potential for growth within the system. Reynolds now works with the Accountability Division, his first-hand experience informing training on peer intervention and ethical policing. His testimony against Brentwood proved instrumental in the federal case. The strength of our justice system lies not in its perfection, but in its capacity for correction, Washington continues. When we identify failures, we create opportunities for improvement. She gestures to Captain Foster, inviting her to join the presentation. Foster approaches the podium with measured confidence, her transformation from witness to leader evident in her posture. Captain Foster pins on her new badge, Washington observes as Foster displays her credentials. Not as a reward for loyalty to individuals, but as recognition of her loyalty to principles. Foster addresses the cadets directly. 6 months ago, I faced a choice between protecting a colleague and protecting the Constitution I swore to uphold. I chose the Constitution. Every day, you will face similar choices. The cadets absorb her words, many taking notes. This is not abstract theory, but practical wisdom from officers who have navigated ethical challenges firsthand. The dashboard camera that recorded my detention has become your protection, Washington tells them. Transparency safeguards officers who serve with integrity. It exposes those who abuse their authority. The camera doesn't lie, it simply observes. The presentation shifts to statistics from departments nationwide. Those embracing accountability measures show improved safety for citizens and officers alike. Those resisting reform continue to face lawsuits, settlements, and declining public trust. Constitutional policing isn't just legally required, Washington emphasizes. It's strategically advantageous. Communities that trust their police departments provide more cooperation, more information, and more support. As the session concludes, Washington opens the floor for questions. The cadets engage thoughtfully, their inquiries revealing genuine commitment to ethical service rather than perfunctory compliance. After the final question, Washington offers her closing thoughts. When I was wrongfully detained 6 months ago, I had a choice. I could seek personal vindication, or I could pursue systemic reform. I chose reform because lasting justice comes through transformed institutions, not individual penalties. She surveys the room, making eye contact with the future officers. Each of you will hold extraordinary power over the lives of citizens. Use that power with wisdom, restraint, and respect for the constitutional protections that define our nation. The auditorium fills with applause as Washington concludes her presentation. Outside, television crews wait to interview her about the department's progress under federal oversight, a model now being studied by police departments across the country. Judge Washington takes her seat at the bench, a new case before her. The courtroom looks the same as it did 6 months ago, yet everything has changed. The officers providing security stand taller, their training reformed, their understanding of constitutional limits clearer. The morning sunlight streams through the courthouse windows, illuminating the scales of justice mounted on the wall. Balance restored, not through vengeance, but through accountability. Washington thinks briefly of Officer Brentwood, now facing the consequences of his actions through the same judicial system he had disregarded. His case proceeds not as retribution, but as affirmation that no one, regardless of badge or position, stands above the law. She opens the case file before her, another allegation of systemic misconduct in a different institution. The work continues, one case at a time, one reform at a time. Justice requires vigilance, courage, and the willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. The bailiff calls the court to order. Judge Washington straightens her robes, ready to apply the law with the impartiality and integrity that has defined her career. The system isn't perfect, but its capacity for self-correction remains its greatest strength. "This court is now in session," she announces, her voice steady and clear. If this tale of justice served and accountability in action resonated with you, there's plenty more where that came from. Hit that subscribe button right now to join our community of justice seekers and story lovers. Each week, we bring you powerful narratives where underdogs rise, wrongs are righted, and the truth prevails. From courtroom dramas to everyday heroes standing up against corruption, Beat Stories delivers the emotional catharsis you crave. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who appreciates a good justice story, and ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads.
This isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of what happens when truth meets visibility. At Beat Stories, we believe exposure is the first step to transformation. Subscribe and stay tuned, because the next story might be yours.